Here in this video we will dive deep and reveal to you guys the timeline and history of Sauron throughout the ages of Arda, from before the Valian years to the end of the Third Age. Let's get to it. So in the days before days, the story begins with the creation of the Ainur. They are taught the art of music, which becomes the subject of their immortal lives. These spirit beings, created by Eru Iluvatar, include the Valar and the Maiar, and one of the Maiar would be known as Mairon, the first and original name of Sauron. And then we come to the creation of Arda. In the Ainur, the Ainur sing alone and in small groups about themes given to each of them by Eru Iluvatar, who proposes a collaborative music where they sing together in harmony. Then Eru Iluvatar takes the Ainur to see a vision of how their music would form at the end of the void and creating Arda. And then in the first Valian year, in the very beginning of the world, Mairon and the others descend into Arda, him being tasked with assisting the Valar named Aule the smith in preparing the land for the coming of the children of Iluvatar and becoming the second greatest smiths of all time. In 1500 of the Valian years, since the creation of the world, Melkor had been tainting and disrupting the works of the Valar and the Maiar, including that of Mairon, who would later be known as Sauron. It wasn't until the Valar Tulkas descended into Arda that Melkor fled. Mairon would then work with Aule in healing the damage. It was around this time, in the 3400th Valian year, which translates into 32,578 solar years, after descending into Arda, that Mairon would be seduced by Melkor into becoming his spy and continue to reside in the island of Almaren. In the year 3450 of the Valian years, the two lamps were destroyed by Melkor, along with the Isle of Almaren. Sauron likely aided Melkor in his deeds, although still feigning loyalty to Aule and the other Valar. In year 1 of the Years of the Trees, when the two trees were created right after the destruction of the two lamps, Sauron moved from the destroyed land of Almaren to the mainlands of Valinor, but still as a spy of Melkor, and the Valar still none the wiser. Year 1050 of the Years of the Trees. When Melkor fled and established his strongholds in Middle-earth, Mairon left Valinor and openly declared his allegiance, thus becoming known now as Sauron. This coincided with the awakening of the elder children of Iluvatar, the Elves, in the far east of Middle-earth. In 1090 of the Years of the Trees, during this time Melkor built his second lesser fortress of Angband in the west. Angband was delved into the mountains, the Iron Mountains, and was given to Sauron to command. It was with Sauron's aid that Melkor was able to breed orcs in mockery of the children of Iluvatar. When the Valar defeated and captured Melkor, Sauron remained dormant inside the pits of the dark of Angband. In 1495 of the Years of the Trees, Sauron, as one of the chief lieutenants of Melkor, controlled things in his absence. Angband's reconstruction began, and the orcs there multiplied under his command. The Sindar elves in Beleriand would call him Gorthor, meaning the dread abomination. By 1495 of the Years of the Trees, Angband was almost ready for Melkor's return, and this coincided with the destruction of the two trees. So in 456 of the Years of the Sun, the Dagor Bragolak, or the Bell of Sudden Flame, was unleashed, and it was the fourth of the great battles of the War of the Great Jewels. It marked the end of the siege of Angband and the beginning of Morgoth's crushing of the elves and men of Beleriand, of which Sauron was a part of. In 457 of the Years of the Sun, Sauron led a host of Balrogs in order to seize the elvish Isle of Tol Sirion, which was also known as Minas Tirith. After the capture, he renamed the place as Tol in Gorhoth, which means the Isle of Werewolves. In 460 of the Years of the Sun, Sauron began breeding large wolves in the Isle, and by sending evil spirits into the fell beasts, he turned them into werewolves. In 460, Barahir, an Edain, who was an ally of the elves, was betrayed and killed by Sauron's forces, the same man whose ring would become the heirloom to the rulers of Gondor in the latter ages. In 465 of the Years of the Sun, in the quest for the Silmaril, Beren and Finrod were captured by Sauron while attempting to sneak past Tol in Gorhoth, disguised as orcs. Soon after, Luthien and Huan the Hound arrived in the tower. Huan defeated Sauron's servants, including Droglin the werewolf, and then Sauron and werewolf form as well. who attacked Luthien but was subdued by Huan, and then fled in the form of a vampire. In 587 of the Years of the Sun, after his defeat by Luthien, Sauron played little role in the remainder of the First Age, possibly hiding from Morgoth's wrath. When Morgoth was defeated and taken to Valinor in chains, Sauron reappeared to repent and sought mercy from Eowyn, the host of the West. However, unwilling to face judgment in Valinor, he fled and hid in Middle-earth. Then in the year 500 of the Second Age, about this time, Sauron begins to stir again in the east of Middle-earth. The evil is soon perceived by the elves and the remnants of the Edain in Middle-earth, but they remain unaware of the source of that evil. In the year 1000 of the Second Age, Sauron began revealing himself once more, and by this year he had gathered power and established himself in the land of Mordor, in southeast of Middle-earth, and began building the dreaded Barad-dûr fortress near Mount Doom, amassing an army of orcs, trolls and other fell creatures. In the year 1200 of the Second Age, Sauron once again takes on a fair form and calls himself the Lord of Gifts or Anatar. As an emissary of the Valar, Sauron endeavors to seduce the Eldar, but the High King Gil-galad refuses to treat with him. However, the smiths of Eregion were enticed. In 1500 of the Second Age, he befriends the elf-smith of Eregion, including Celebrimbor, the greatest of the craftsmen, a descendant of the legendary Fëanor. Anatar counseled them in the arts of magic. Eventually he gave the elven smiths the knowledge to forge magic rings, which he infused with potent spells without their knowledge. In 1590 of the Second Age, after the 7 rings for the dwarves and the 9 rings for mortal men were created, the 3 elven rings were made in secret and without Sauron's aid, but using the same knowledge, and therefore the rings also being susceptible to the 1 ring that would be created later on. In the year 1600 of the Second Age, the 1 ring was forged within the crags of Doom upon Mount Doom. Sauron knew that the 1 ring would require an extraordinary amount of power. As such, he concentrated within the ring a greater part of his own soul. In this way, Sauron's fate became bound to that 1 ring, and this was the 1 ring that the other rings would bow to. In the year 1605 of the Second Age, around this time, Sauron would begin to gather and prepare armies in the east to invade Eriador. But this is opposed by the 2 blue wizards in the east, the Ithran Luin, a little known fact that was confirmed in the last writings of J.R.R. Tolkien. From 1693 till 1701 of the Second Age, the War of the Elves and Sauron, also known as the First War with Sauron, was started. This great war got ramped up with Sauron's invasion of Eriador in 1695, with the death of Celebrimbor and the destruction of Eregion in 1697, and overrunning the lands of Eriador in 1699, and finally his defeat at the forces of Gil-galad and the Númenóreans in 1701. 2251 of the Second Age, the Nazgûl, the ring wraiths, begin to appear. It is around this time that Sauron's 1 ring had totally corrupted the 9 that were given to men, and also driving the effects of the 7 given to the Dwarf Lords, making them even more greedy and isolated. In the year 3262 of the Second Age, Sauron took the title of the Kings of Men, and King Ar-Pharazôn, who was envious of this, landed in Umbar with his troops and demanded Sauron's surrender. Recognizing that he could not defeat the Númenóreans, Sauron came from Barad-dûr without a fight, assumed a fair form, and was taken to Númenor as a hostage. Between 3262 and 3319 of the Second Age, Sauron, from being a prisoner and a hostage, gradually gains trust and becomes Ar-Pharazôn's most trusted advisor. As his power and influence reached its peak, he raised a great temple for Morgoth and convinced Ar-Pharazôn to rebel against the Valar and attack Valinor to claim it for himself and to claim immortality. This led to the Isle of Númenor being sung by Eru Ilúvatar in a divine intervention, and Sauron's body being destroyed in that he will never able to take fair form again. In the year 3320 of the Second Age, just a year later, Sauron's spirit had already travelled and reached Mordor once again, bearing the 1 ring, which he slowly rebuilt a new body and strength, for a large part of his soul is bound to the 1 ring, and this item can only be destroyed in Mount Doom. Between 3429 and 3441 of the Second Age, the War of the Last Alliance began, and was fought by the last alliance of men and elves against the Dark Lord Sauron and his forces in response to his threat of conquest. This ended in the deaths of High King Gil-galad and King Elendil, as well as Isildur cutting off the One Ring from Sauron's hand, effectively winning the war at the footsteps of Mount Doom. In the second year of the Third Age, only 2 years after Isildur refused to destroy the One Ring in Mount Doom, he and a company of his men were ambushed by orcs. He was killed and the One Ring was lost to the Anduin River, never to be found again for 2458 years. Then, 1050 of the Third Age, a mysterious being came onto Amon Lang in the south of Greenwood the Great, and there he built a stronghold known as Dol Guldur, the Hill of Sorcery. This was the magician known as the Necromancer, who was later revealed to be none other than Sauron himself, corrupting the land into what will be later called as Mirkwood. Between 1300 and 1974 of the Third Age, Sauron orders the Witch King to create the realm of Angmar in the north, and with it came the Angmar conflict with Arnor and Gondor that lasted from 1356 till 1977 of the Third Age. This conflict resulted in the destruction of Arnor and also of the fell realm of Angmar. Between 1635 and 1637 of the Third Age, a great plague spread beyond Mordor in ruin and to all of Middle-earth. It was believed by many to have been caused by Sauron, as the plague coincided with a shadow deepening in Mirkwood, foretelling his return and also the reappearance of evil things. In 2002 of the Third Age, Sauron would redirect the Witch King and the rest of the Nazgul to lay siege on the city of Minas Ithil and conquer it, turning the once beautiful city of Gondor into Minas Morgul. At the same time, Sauron will begin to use one of the Palantiri stones, the Ithil Stone. Between the year 2060 and 2063, Saruman begins to suspect that the Necromancer was in fact Sauron, and by 2063, Gandalf would be sent to investigate. However, this mysterious entity would have already fled to the east and begin corrupting the Easterlings, and with this begins a time known as the Watchful Peace. 2460 of the Third Age. After 4 centuries, the Watchful Peace ends, and just as the One Ring was found by Deagel and was subsequently stolen by Smeagol. And in the same year, the Necromancer returns to the Hill of Sorcery, otherwise known as Dol Guldur. In 2480 of the Third Age, only 20 years after his return to Dol Guldur, Sauron begins sending orcs to make secret strongholds in the Misty Mountains, and also sends orcs to Moria to populate the abandoned dwarf realm that was occupied by a Balrog. In the year 2941 of the Third Age, Bilbo finds the One Ring during the quest to the Lonely Mountain. At the same time, the White Council begins their attack on Dol Guldur in order to prevent Smaug and Sauron the Necromancer from allying with each other. In 2951 of the Third Age, Barad-dûr was rebuilt under the Nazgul by this time, and Sauron had finally returned to the dreaded fortress. At the same time, 3 of the Nazgul were sent to reoccupy Dol Guldur once more. In year 3000 of the Third Age, Saruman becomes an ally of Sauron. Thus Isengard would become an evil fortress allied with Mordor, and the orcs that had been bred there since 2990 were increased in number in order to form an army. In the year 3009 of the Third Age, Gollum would be captured and taken to the dungeons of Barad-dûr and forced to reveal to Sauron under intense torture what he knew about the One Ring. Sauron then releases Gollum after learning everything, and in hopes of Gollum drawing out the One Ring to the open. In the year 3018 of the Third Age, the War of the Ring begins. Thranduil's kingdom in Mirkwood is assailed by orcs. Osgiliath is taken by the orcs, and much of the land east of the Anduin comes under Mordor's control. Gandalf learns of the treachery of Saruman. Frodo with the One Ring reaches Rivendell, and the Council of Elrond is held, and the Fellowship of the Ring is thus formed. In the year 3019 of the Third Age, the events of the Lord of the Rings in the final phases takes place, with the One Ring finally being destroyed in Mount Doom and Sauron defeated for the final time, with his final fate becoming a spirit no longer with the power to create a new body and take shape again. Now that is the complete timeline of Sauron, beginning from the Valian years and before that, before the Days of Days, to the end of the Third Age. Now if you like this video then watch this other one too. And do check out our channel for other dragon, monster and Middle-earth content. We might have things you haven't seen before. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care, guys.